Bhakti, bhakti, bhakti. Bhakti yoga, bhakti yoga, bhakti yoga. Bhakti yoga, bhakti yoga, bhakti yoga. Bhakti, 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 bhakti. 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 Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda. Read Krishna book. Yeah, Krishna. Bhakti yoga, bhakti yoga, bhakti yoga. Bhakti yoga, bhakti yoga, bhakti yoga. Jai Shri Prabhupada. Hey Krishna. Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Iti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Vastacha Desatarine Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivas Adi Gauravinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Jai Vishnupai Paramahamsa Padavicharya Saraswati Shri Sriman Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Vachikapati Rubhyascha Kripa Sindhamyevacha Titanam Pajanebhyo Vaishnavibhyo Namo Namaha. Krishna Jai Jai Srila Prabhupada. Hey Krishna. Woo! Nityananda. So, this is Krishna book. 5th chapter. The meeting of Nanda and Vasudeva. So, Krishna has appeared as baby Vishnu to Vasudeva and Devaki, and out of their parental affection and fear of conscious atrocities, he's been switched with Nanda and Yasoda's baby, who was a female, but was actually Krishna's sister, Durga, Yogamaya, Durga. And Kamsa had some realizations when he tried to kill Durga, thinking that Durga was Krishna. She chastised him, told him he was a fool. And he had some realizations. Wait a minute, why am I so afraid of death? Everybody's going to die. And he actually, with tears in his eyes, and feeling so much remorse, and shame, and fear, and guilt, and all these things, fell at the feet of his sister and her husband, Vasudeva and Devaki, and begged for their forgiveness, which he got. But then the next day, his demoniac advisors puffed up his false ego, telling him even the demigods are afraid of you. And Vishnu, he can't do anything. Yeah, he's in everyone's heart, but he's hidden in there, and he doesn't come out. He's not coming out. So they advised him to continue with his campaign to stop this Krishna, kill this Krishna. And don't just, we don't know where he is. He's taken birth somewhere. So let's just kill all the children that have taken birth recently. Just kill them all. We got all the bases covered. And while we're at it, since Vishnu, the limbs of Vishnu are the Brahmins and the sacrifices and the cows, they're all very significant to Lord Vishnu. Let's just kill all of them too. So that's where it's at. Kamsa's he's getting ready to, and he's giving the green light, go ahead. Yeah, let's just kill them all. Let's get this, be done with it. And there'll be no obstacles in our path. So, the meeting of Nanda and Vasudeva. Although Krishna was the real son of Vasudeva and Devaki, because of Kamsa's atrocious activities, Vasudeva could not enjoy the birth ceremony of his son. But Nanda Maharaj, the foster father, celebrated the birth ceremony of Krishna very joyfully. The next day, it was declared that a male child was born of Yasoda. According to Vedic custom, Nanda Maharaj called for learned astrologers and brahmanas to perform the birth ceremony. After the birth of a child, the astrologers calculate the moment of the birth and make a horoscope of the child's future life. Another ceremony takes place after the birth of the child. The family members take baths, cleanse themselves, decorate themselves with ornaments and garlands. Then they come before the child and the astrologer to hear of the future life of the child. Nanda Maharaj and other members of the family, dressed, sat down in front of the birthplace. All the brahmanas who were assembled there on this occasion chanted auspicious mantras according to the rituals, while the astrologers performed the birth ceremony. All the demigods are also worshipped on this occasion, as well as the forefathers of the family. Nanda Maharaj distributed 200,000 well-decorated, dressed, and ornamented cows to the brahmanas. He not only gave cows in charity, but hills of grain decorated with golden bordered garments and many ornaments. In the material world, we possess riches and wealth in many ways, but sometimes not in very honest and pious ways, because that is the nature of accumulating wealth. According to Vedic injunction, therefore, such wealth should be purified by giving cows and gold in charity to the brahmanas. A newborn child is also purified by giving grains in charity to the brahmanas. In this material world, it is to be understood that we're always living in a contaminated state. We therefore have to purify the duration of our lives, our possession of wealth, and ourselves. The duration of life is purified by taking daily bath and cleansing the body inside and outside, and accepting 10 kinds of purificatory processes. By austerities, by worship of the Lord, and by distribution of charity, we can purify the possession of our wealth. We can purify ourselves by studying the Vedas, by striving for self-realization, and by understanding the supreme absolute truth. It is therefore stated in the Vedic literature that by birth, everyone is born a Sudra, and by accepting the purificatory process, one becomes twice born. By studies of the Vedas, one can become Vipra, which is the preliminary qualification for becoming a Brahmana. When one understands the absolute truth in perfection, he is called a Brahmana. And when the Brahmana reaches further perfection, he becomes a Vaishnava, or a devotee. When one understands the absolute truth in perfection, he is called a Brahmana. And when the Brahmana reaches further perfection, he becomes a Vaishnava, or a devotee. In that ceremony, all the Brahmanas assembled began to chant different kinds of Vedic mantras to invoke all good fortune for the child. There are different kinds of chanting known as Sutta, Magadha, Bandi, and Virudavali. Along with this chanting of mantras and songs, bugles and kettle drums sounded outside the house. On this occasion, the joyous vibrations could be heard in all the pasturing grounds and all the houses. Within and outside of the houses, there were varieties of artistic paintings done with rice pulp. Scented water was sprinkled everywhere, even on the roads and streets. Ceilings and roofs were decorated with different kinds of flags, festoons, and green leaves. The gates were made of green leaves and flowers. All the cows, bulls, and calves were smeared with a mixture of oil and turmeric and painted with minerals like red oxide, yellow clay, and manganese. They wore garlands of peacock feathers and were covered with nice colored dresses and gold necklaces. Well, that is such a beautiful description. I have to read that again. In that ceremony, all the Brahmanas assembled began to chant different kinds of Vedic mantras to invoke all good fortune for the child. There are different kinds of chanting known as Sutta, Magadha, Vandi, and Virudavali. Along with this chanting of mantras and songs, bugles and kettle drums sounded outside the house. On this occasion, the joyous vibrations could be heard in all the pasturing grounds and all the houses. Within and outside of the houses, there were varieties of artistic paintings done with rice pulp, and scented water was sprinkled everywhere, even on the roads and streets. Ceilings and roofs were decorated with different kinds of flags, festoons, and green leaves. The gates were made of green leaves and flowers. All the cows, bulls, and calves were smeared with a mixture of oil and turmeric and painted with minerals like red oxide, yellow clay, and manganese. They wore garlands of peacock feathers and were covered with nice colored dresses and gold necklaces. When all the ecstatic cowherd men heard that Nanda Maharaj, father of Krishna, or celebrating the birth ceremony of his son, they became spontaneously joyful. They dressed themselves with very costly garments and ornamented their bodies with different kinds of earrings and necklaces and wore great turbans on their heads. After dressing themselves in this gorgeous way, they took various kinds of presentations and thus approached the house of Nanda Maharaj. As soon as they heard that Mother Yasoda had given birth to a child, all the cowherd women became overwhelmed with joy, and they also dressed themselves with various kinds of costly garments and ornaments and smeared scented cosmetics on their bodies. As the dust on the lotus flower exhibits the exquisite beauty of the flower, all the gopis, cowherd girls, applied the dust of kumkum on their lotus-like faces. These beautiful gopis took their different presentations and very soon reached the house of Maharaj Nanda. Overburdened with their heavy hips and swollen breasts, the gopis could not proceed very quickly towards the house of Nanda Maharaj, but out of ecstatic love for Krishna, they began to proceed as quickly as possible. Their ears were decorated with pearl earrings, their necks were decorated with jewel padlocks, and their lips and eyes were decorated with different kinds of lipstick and ointment, and their hands were decorated with nice golden bangles. As they were very hastily passing over the stone road, the flower garlands which were decorating their bodies fell to the ground, and it appeared that a shower of flowers was falling from the sky. From the movement of the different kinds of ornaments on their bodies, they were looking still more beautiful. In this way, they all reached the house of Nanda Yasoda and blessed the child. Dear child, you live long just to protect us, they prayed. While they were blessing the child Krishna in this way, they offered a mixture of turmeric powder with oil, yogurt, milk, and water. They not only sprinkled this mixture on the body of child Krishna, but on all other persons who were present there. Also, on that auspicious occasion, there were different bands of expert musicians playing. When the cowherd men saw the pastimes of the cowherd women, they became very joyful. And in response, they also began to throw yogurt, milk, clarified butter, and water upon the bodies of the gopis. Then both parties began to throw butter on each other's bodies. Nanda Maharaj was also very happy to see the pastimes of the cowherd men and women, and he became very liberal in giving charity to the different singers who were assembled there. Some singers were reciting great verses from Upanishads and Puranas, some were glorifying the family ancestors, and some were singing very sweet songs. There were also many learned brahmanas present, and Nanda Maharaj, being very satisfied on this occasion, began to give them different kinds of ornaments, garments, and cows in charity. It is very important to note in this connection how wealthy the inhabitants of Vrindavan were simply by raising cows. All the cowherd men belonged to the Vaishya community, and their business was to protect the cows and cultivate crops. By their dress and ornaments, and by their behavior, it appears that although they were in a small village, they were still very rich in material possessions. They possessed such an abundance of various kinds of milk products that they were throwing butter lavishly on each other's bodies without restriction. Their wealth was in milk, yogurt, clarified butter, and many other milk products, and by trading their agricultural products, they were very rich in various kinds of jewelry, ornaments, and costly dresses. Not only did they possess all these things, but they could give them away in charity, as did Nanda Maharaj. Thus, Nanda Maharaj, the foster father of Lord Krishna, began to satisfy the desires of all the men assembled there. He respectively received them and gave them in charity whatever they desired. The learned brahmanas, who had no other source of income, were completely dependent on the Vaishya and Kshatriya communities for their maintenance, and they received gifts on such festive occasions as birthdays, marriages, etc. While Nanda Maharaj was worshipping Lord Vishnu on this occasion and was trying to satisfy all the people there, his only desire was that the newborn child Krishna would be very happy. Nanda Maharaj had no knowledge that this child was the origin of Vishnu, but he was praying to Lord Vishnu to protect him. Rohini Devi, mother of Balaram, was the most fortunate wife of Vasudeva. She was away from her husband, yet just to congratulate Maharaj Nanda on the occasion of the birth ceremony of his son Krishna, she dressed herself very nicely. Wearing a garland, a necklace, and other bodily ornaments, she appeared on the scene and moved hither and thither. According to the Vedic system, a woman whose husband is not at home should not dress herself very nicely. But although Rohini's husband was away, she still dressed herself on this occasion. Jai Shri Prabhupada, Krishna, Chaitanya.